And to be honest, I haven't done a very thorough preparation of because the content is great and it's huge, and there are so many wonderful points in every purport that Prabhupada writes here. So yeah, please forgive me if I miss something out, and and I seek the prayers and blessings of all of you that I can do justice to this important chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, titled as Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So to begin with, just to glorify the process of bhakti and Srimad Bhagavatam, through Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is actually, we began the first chapter where the sages in Naimisharanya are asking questions to Suta Goswami. And then Suta Goswami is now answering their questions. That is where we are. But then going ahead, the stories get interwoven a lot. Then Shukdev Goswami starts talking about, what happened in when Parikshit got cursed, King Parikshit. So King Parikshit got cursed, and then he went to Shukdev Goswami, another great sage who had learned the Bhagavatam from his father, Srila Vyasadeva. And then he inquires, so Maharaj Parikshit, he's cursed to die within 7 days. And he's inquiring from Shukadev Goswami as to what is to be done, what is the ultimate aim of life, what is the ultimate thing one should be doing at the time of death. And that is how in 7 days Shukadev Goswami talks about Bhagavatam. And within the conversation between Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami, the conversations go back in time. There is discussion about Dhruva, which is completely in a different yuga. Then there is discussion of Prahlad, which is also in a completely different yuga, and so many other stories. And then Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan when he had appeared. So there is a lot of interweaving of stories that happens, interweaving of conversations, a lot of hopping between yugas and hopping between times. But the wonderful thing is, through all this, the essence, the message remains same. And this actually, in a way, indicates the timelessness of the message, the eternality of the message of pure bhakti. And this is also something that Krishna alludes to in the Bhagavad Gita, when he says that he gave the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god Vivaswan, something like 120 million years ago or something. So that goes to show that, okay, Bhagavad Gita was not just, the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita was not just meant for that time, place, and circumstance, but the fact that it is timeless. Same goes with Srimad Bhagavatam. The fact that the message of bhakti remains the same through all these different contexts kind of proves that the path of bhakti is kind of context independent, and it applies to all contexts. And that is what actually I was hearing Radhanath Maharaj recently, where he was saying that the urgency, we need to have the urgency of taking to the practice of bhakti and trying to do our best in that. So with that background in mind, I'll start with prayers. And Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणम्। I offer my respects to the spiritual masters by whose mercy even a lame man can cross mountains and even a dumb person can become an eloquent speaker. So a lot of content to cover today. And so this is the third chapter of the first canto. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And we know the 6 questions that were asked by the sages at Naimisharanya to Suta Goswami. And then, so just to recap a little bit, the first question was, what is the ultimate good for humanity? And that was answered as devotional service. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje. There are so many dharmas we might come up with. There are so many dharmas we might concoct. But what is the paro dharma? What is the highest dharma? That is yato bhaktir adhokshaje. Bhakti towards adhokshaja or Krishna. And how is that bhakti? Ahituki and apratihata. Okay. Unmotivated and uninterrupted. And then the second question that was asked was, what is the essence of all scriptures? And the answer to that is the process of bhakti yoga, which gives rise to knowledge and detachment. Knowledge about the name, fame, glories, pastimes of Krishna, and then detachment from the things that are not favorable towards our Krishna consciousness. That is the essence of all scriptures. The third question is Krishna's appearance, and Krishna appears to perform his pastimes and to attract pure souls and to attract all of us to take to the path of bhakti and to aspire to participate in these activities. And then that is also mentioned in the third chapter, in the current chapter, where Suta Goswami talks about the various incarnations of Krishna. And then the fourth question is about Purusha Avtaras. So Purusha Avtaras are those incarnations of Krishna who are responsible for the creation of the material world, so to say. And then there are Leela Avtaras. So we'll actually see these categories of different Avtaras. So today's discussion is going to be quite technical in a way. So if you have any questions, if you think something doesn't fit well, or you see some terms being thrown around, please do ask. So Leela Avtaras. So Leela Avtaras are those incarnations of Krishna who perform certain pastimes in the world. And then finally, what is the shelter for religion? Now that Krishna has departed from the world, the context in which this is being spoken is where Krishna has departed from the world. And then in such a case, where does dharma reside? That is the sixth question. So the first two questions were answered, and the third question was also answered in second chapter. And to some extent, even the fourth question was answered. But there will be more details about fourth, fifth, and sixth in this chapter. So with that background in mind, let's start. So text 1 to 5 in the third chapter talk about the Purusha Avtaras. Okay, so Purusha Avtaras are of 3 types. Okay, going back a little bit. So imagine there is sky. Okay, there is the clear sky, and then there is a black cloud in one corner of the sky. And that is what the material world is. So there is the pure spiritual sky that exists. And then within one corner of that spiritual sky is something called as the Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva is like a total aggregated material energy. So it is like, you understand, aggregated, meaning it is something like all the souls who want to enjoy separately from God, they have desires to do that, to do that in certain ways. And then all such desires put together, something like an aggregate tattva, something like an aggregate principle. You can imagine it like an aggregate cloud is what exists in one corner of the spiritual sky. And that Mahat Tattva is actually kind of opened up or let loose by an incarnation, or rather a manifestation of Lord Vishnu, called as the Mahavishnu or the Karanodakashayi Vishnu. So Karanodakashayi Vishnu, so he Karana. So anything in the world needs to have a cause, and that Karana is this Mahavishnu, who lies on something called as the causal ocean. And from there he lets loose, he glances over Mahat Tattva and lets it loose, so that the entire material creation starts happening. So that is the first category of Vishnu. Usually we hear of Vishnu in terms of like the Vishnu who maintains, like the trio of the trinity of Hinduism, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. But Vishnu is a much more deeper concept, and like the personality Vishnu exists on multiple levels, and that is what we are seeing. So once this Mahavishnu or the Karanodakashayi Vishnu glances over this total material energy or Mahat Tattva, it is let loose and creation starts happening. Now within, so how the creation happens is within the pores of Mahavishnu, these universes come out. In innumerable universes, they come out. And then within each universe, again, Vishnu expands and manifests as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Now, there is the Mahavishnu from whom the universes come out and expand. And when he breathes out, and then within each of the universe, there is another Vishnu called Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, from whose navel Lord Brahma is born. So for every universe, you have Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, from whose navel Brahma is born, and Brahma is like the chief engineer of the whole universe. So he does the task of creating and kind of the architect of the entire universe. And then now once Brahma creates, and then the living entities start residing in these universes and trying to play out their desires within the heart of each living entity. Again, Vishnu expands as Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. So Kshirodakashayi Vishnu is nothing but the Paramatma in all of our hearts. So this is like the three multi-level Vishnu expansions that happen, and these are called as Purusha Avtaras. So, and yeah, so I have a few notes here. I'll be checking on them as we go. So the purpose of material creation is given in the first text of this chapter. And what is that purpose? A facility for the Nitya Baddha, or the eternally conditioned living entity, to enjoy separately from God. And Mahatattva is, as I said, like a total material energy. And then after, so yeah, when Mahavishnu breathes out, these universes come out and expand. And when he breathes in, these universes shrink, and then they go back into the body of Mahavishnu into a state. And then for a while, everything, that total material energy, is in the state of Shushupti, or something like a sleep state. And then when creation needs to happen again, this whole process starts again. Mahavishnu will glance over material nature, and then universes will come out and things like that. And then again, there are some technical details which like what is this Mahat Tattva, or this total material energy consisted of. There are 16 ingredients, like 5 gross material elements and 11 working instruments of the senses. So yeah, this is all technicality. And then again in text 2, it talks about the bodily pores, from whom bodily pores of Mahavishnu, innumerable universes spring up. And then Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, from his navel Lord Brahma is born. So that is text first and second. And then in text third, the Virat Rupa. Okay, so we have spoken about the Purusha avatars or the types of Vishnu. In the third text, the Virat Rupa, or the form of the Lord that is imagined as the world itself, that is spoken about. And but so the verse states, it is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha, but he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. His body is eternally in spiritual existence par excellence. Okay, so although it seems as if, you know, this universes are coming out and, you know, resting on Lord Vishnu, but this verse states that Lord Vishnu doesn't have anything to do with the happenings, that the desires of the living entities, so to say, and he's aloof from them. And this Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita as well. And then in the purport, Prabhupada says that, like, the Virat Rupa, this is another form of Lord that some spiritualists imagine, which consists of the world itself. So they think of the world, entire world, as the body of God, and then various features of the world being various parts of the body of the Lord. And then we'll talk about more about this Virat Rupa as we go ahead. So that is text 3. Text 4 talks about pure love. Okay, I don't think I've done a great job of preparing for this one, the flow that I thought I would go with. But anyway, so text 4, here is what it states. The devotees with their perfect eyes see the transcendental form of the Purusha, who has thousands of legs, thighs, arms, and faces, all extraordinary. In that body, there are thousands of heads, ears, eyes, nose. They are decorated with thousands of helmets, glowing earrings, and are adorned with garlands. So here again, the path of bhakti is glorified in as a prerequisite to actually be able to perceive the Lord. And Prabhupada also quotes the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. Okay. So that is the text 4, and then text 5 is about Garbhodakshai Vishnu being the source of all the multifarious incarnations within the universe. So from Garbhodakshai Vishnu come the various incarnations that we will talk about. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains the 6 types of incarnations or avatars. Okay, so anyone if anyone knows off the top of their mind any of the types, please. I did mention some of them in the beginning. So of course, Purusha avatars, the different types of Vishnus that we saw, they are of course there. That is one type. And then what is the second type?
Leela avatars.
Leela avatars, yes, thank you. So the Leela avatars like are the ones who perform pastimes like Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Ram, etc., Vamana. And then even Krishna performs Leela, but there is another category in which Krishna is categorized as, that is Yuga avatars. So Krishna is called as the Yuga avatar. And then Yuga avatars are, they come to teach the Yuga Dharma. Like we have seen that there are different processes of spiritual realization in different yugas. So each of these Yuga avatars come and profess that particular process of bhakti in that particular yuga or age. And Krishna is, of course, he came in Dwapar Yuga, and then there are different colors in Satya Yuga. Krishna appears as golden, and then Dwapar Yuga he appears as black, and then Treta Yuga he appears as some green, I think Ram, and then Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is a little special because in Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya is considered as the Yuga avatar, but then he is like a secret avatar, and this is actually mentioned by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto, where he says that, "Oh Lord, you appear in every yuga, but in Kali Yuga you appear secretly. You don't kind of manifest your godhood to others." So that is one category, Yuga avatars. And there are the Guna avatars. Guna avatars are the incarnations in charge of different gunas or qualities. Mainly Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So the Guna avatar for Sattva or mode of goodness is Lord Vishnu. For mode of passion is Lord Brahma, and mode of ignorance is Lord Shiva. And then that's the Guna avatars. And then finally, okay, there is Manavantara avatara. So there is a personality called as Manu, who is known as the father of mankind. He's one of the Devtas. And then there are 14 Manus within one day of Brahma. And then such a Brahma lives for 100 years. So you can imagine how many Manus live. So again, the Manus are also considered as a portion of the Lord who come and do the task of spreading mankind, or Manu is like the first progenitor, if I'm not wrong. From Manu, the entire mankind comes. Sorry. Someone said something, yeah. And Nitya Kishori Mataji said yes, Shakti Avesh Avatar. Shakti Avesh Avatar are they are jivas, like jivas meaning souls like us, who are specially empowered by the Lord to perform some great task. So they are like the Shakti Avesh Avatar. For example, Parshuram is known as Shakti Avesh Avatar. And then even Srila Prabhupada, who did this enormous task of bringing bhakti to the West, is also many times categorized as Shakti Avesh Avatar, because he was specially empowered by the Lord to perform some task. Because certain tasks, they cannot be performed by any ordinary person. It requires a lot of advancement and lot of power really to do what they do. So that is the Shakti Avesh. So these are the 6 types of avatars that Prabhupada mentions in the purport. And from text 6 to text 27, each of the verse talks about 1 or 2 of the avatars. So it begins with Kumaras, the 4 Kumaras who were the sons of Brahma, and then Varaha. So Varaha is the boar form of the Lord. So just like a boar picks up something from the filth, similarly the planet Earth was actually sunken into the nether regions or the hellish planets. And then Varahadev was actually, he was instrumental in picking up the earth. So yeah. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. And then you have Narad Muni, who is also considered as an empowered incarnations. So the speciality of Narad Muni is that he has disciples all over the universe in different planets as well as different species of life. You have Prahlad, who is a disciple of Narada Muni. You have Dhruva Maharaj, who is a disciple of Narad Muni. So Narad Muni has very illustrious disciples all over the universe. So he's known as a specially empowered incarnation. Then the 4th one that is mentioned is Narnarayan Rishi. So Narnarayan Rishi, they are like the embodiment of renunciation. We discussed Narnarayan Rishi a little bit in the previous session. And then 5th one is Lord Kapila. So he gave the Sankhya system of philosophy. So Sankhya means counting in a literal sense. But the system of philosophy of Sankhya is actually deconstructing the entire material universe into its constituent elements, and then that way trying to achieve spiritual perfection. The 6th one is Dattatreya. There is an interesting story that is associated with Dattatreya, where his mother, that is the wife of sage Atri, Anusuya, she prayed to Lord Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva that they come as they combine to come as her son. And that's what Dattatreya is. So he's like a combined incarnation of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And then the 7th incarnation is Yagya, the son of Prajapati Ruchi and his wife Akuti. I'm not sure if I don't know much background about Yagya. Then the 8th incarnation is King Rishabha. So Rishabha also, some of his very famous verses that are often quoted within devotee circles, like Tapo Divyam Putrakayena Sattvam. He's preaching to his sons and he's saying that the tapasya is like the main purpose of the human form of life. And yeah, he speaks a lot of philosophy. So Rishabh Dev is also considered as one of the incarnations. Then we have King Prithu as the ninth incarnation. So King Prithu was also, after his father was actually forcefully removed from the throne, because his father was it King Vena? Please correct me if I'm wrong. King Vena was the father of.
Yes, Prabhu. King Vena was the, yeah. And from
Yes,
Vena's body, Prithu was born.
Prithu was born, yeah. So yeah, King Vena was actually very unruly and evil. So the Brahmanas, they decided to finish him, and they did that. And then from his body, Prithu Maharaj was born. And Prithu is actually a pure devotee of the Lord. And then when he came, there was a lot of abundance in the earth. And let's see, there are some questions. So all these avatars in chapter 3 are Purusha avatars. So Purusha avatars are the three Vishnus, Megha. Like we spoke about the three Vishnus in the beginning, they are the Purusha avatars. So currently we are talking about Shakti, like we are talking about the other categories of avatars. So the other 5 categories. So Purusha avatars are Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Kshirodakshai Vishnu. So that's King Prithu as the 9th incarnation, and then the 10th one is Matsya. And Matsya Avatar actually protected Vaivasvata Manu during the inundation after the rule of Chakshusha Manu. So Manus are like these fathers of mankind who come and go during a day of Brahma. And the previous Manu, so we are currently under the rule of Vaivasvata Manu. And then before Vaivasvata Manu was Chakshusha Manu. And after the rule of Chakshusha Manu ended, there was an inundation in the universe, like everything was drowning. And that's when Matsya Avatar, or the form of Lord as fish, protected Vaivasvata Manu. So it is said that he exists, of course. We have faith in the Shastras. So he's actually in one of the planets in Jambudweep. Jambudweep is like a cosmological component of the entire Vedic universe. So he's there serving the Matsya Avatar in pure devotion. Then the 11th one mentioned is Kurma Avatar, who acted as a pivot for the rod that was used to churn the ocean. So it so happened at one time that all these Devatas and Rakshasas, they decided to churn the ocean for nectar. And that time they needed a pivot so that they could churn this thing nicely, churn the ocean nicely and get nectar. And that is where Kurma is another form of Lord Vishnu, a tortoise form, who helped there. And then Dhanavantari, if any of you are from doctor family, like your parents are doctors, or if you know any doctors worship Dhanavantari, because Dhanavantari is like the original doctor, who actually wrote about Ayurveda, I think, and then so many other sciences which have to do with medicine. That's Dhanavantari. And then Mohini Murti is another form of Lord Vishnu, who is a woman, and she has exquisite beauty. And then there are so many amazing stories about Mohini Murti as well. 14th is Narasimha. Narasimha, of course, we have heard and we pray in Narasimha Arti as well. Prahlada Lada Daine, right? He descended to protect his devotee Prahlad from his father Hiranyakashipu. And then we know the pastime where eventually there is a big fight between Hiranyakashipu and Narasimhadev. And then Narasimhadev is successful in killing Hiranyakashipu. And of course, this pastime itself needs a series of lectures, actually. Narasimha pastime, which is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto. Then the 15th incarnation is known as Vamana. So Vamana is like the dwarf Brahmin incarnation of the Lord, who asked for 3 steps of land from Bali Maharaj. And then with those 3 steps, he actually covered the entire universe, top, bottom, middle, everything. And then actually 2 steps. The 3rd step is where Bali Maharaj gave his head. Ki abhi, take me also now. You've already taken everything I had. So Bali Maharaj was the king of the universe that time. He had conquered over everything in the universe. And then this Brahmana came and then he asked, I don't want to ask anything much from you. Just give me 3 steps of land. So Bali Maharaj said, okay, take 3 steps. And then in the first step, he covered the upper planetary systems, this Vamanadev, form of Vishnu. In the second step, he covered the lower ones and the middle ones. And then the third step finally is where Bali Maharaj realized who this person is and he surrendered unto him. Then 16th is called as Parshuram. So Parshuram is another great incarnation of the Lord who killed all the Kshatriyas who were actually exploiting, who had turned exploitative towards the Brahmanas. And Parshuram actually went on a rampage, killing all these Kshatriyas. 17th is Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the one who compiled all the Vedas, the Vedic literatures, the way we know them. He took that one Veda. So the Vedas were one originally. So Vyasadeva divided them into 4. Riksama Yajur, Rig Veda, Atharva Veda, Sam Veda, and Yajur Veda. So that is Vyasadeva, and he also compiled the Puranas and Itihasas and other Shrutis and Smritis, and the Bhagavatam being actually his composition that he composed after his guru Narad Muni instructed him to, which we'll see in the first canto actually in the future chapters. Then 18th is Lord Ram. We all have heard about Lord Ram. He was like the Maryada Purushottam. Maryada Purushottam meaning he exemplified human behavior in the world. And then we also know how he killed Ravana, the demon Ravana, when Ravana kidnapped his wife, Mother Sita. Then the 19th is Lord Balaram, the brother of Lord Krishna. And 20th is also, 20th verse is also, 20th incarnation is also known is also Krishna. And then the 21st is Buddha, Lord Buddha, Gautama Buddha. So he actually came at a stage where the Brahmanas were misusing the Vedas to slaughter animals mercilessly and unrestrictedly. And that's when Lord Buddha came and he took away the faith of these Brahmanas from the Vedic literatures. And that's how, for the time being, the animal killing stopped. And then finally, the 22nd is Kalki. So Kalki is yet to come. He's supposed to come towards the end of Kali Yuga to destroy everything and to start a new golden age of Satya Yuga. So that is Kalki Avatar. So yeah, so many things Prabhupada mentions in the purports. And one important thing is an avatar is not manufactured. An avatar is mentioned in the Shastras, is mentioned in the scriptures. Like I may be very powerful, I may be very good looking, or I may have a lot of influence on many people around me, but I can never say that I'm an avatar of Vishnu. So an avatar of Vishnu is actually very specifically mentioned in the scriptures, when he will come, what activities will he do, who will be his parents, where will he appear, and things like that. So that is so these, now this is where it gets interesting. Okay, we saw the Purusha avatars, we saw all these Leela avatars, or especially empowered beings or plenary portions of Vishnu, like Matsya, Kurma, Mohini, Narsimha, etc. And then now this 28th verse is considered as the Paribhasa Sutra, or like the key verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, at least for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And the verse is Ete Chamsha Kalapumsaha Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Hridayanti Yuge Yuge. So the translation goes like this. Yeah, all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. So this is like considered as a pivotal verse where the supremacy of Lord Krishna over the other incarnations of Vishnu is mentioned. And in fact, even Vishnu, like if if you look at the verse, all of the above mentioned incarnations, so that also includes the Purusha avatars, that also includes the Vishnus that we initially saw. So all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Shri Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is very, very good to know. And one personal realization that I had here is that although the scriptures proclaim, although Lord Krishna himself proclaims himself to be the Supreme Lord in Bhagavad Gita and in many other places, there is a sweetness aspect that is there when you read about Lord Krishna and his devotees. So it's like God tries to hide his godhood in order to have an exchange of love with his devotees. So that sweet aspect of Krishna is something that is really touching to the heart. And then why, right? In the purport, Prabhupada writes, he tries to establish this point with more reasoning. So every avatar, every incarnation of the Lord exhibits some kind of attribute of the Lord. Like Ram Dhanavantari exhibited fame, Balaram, Mohini, Vamana exhibited extraordinary beauty, Dattatreya, Matsya, Kumaras and Kapila, they exhibited transcendental knowledge, Jnana aspect. And then Narnarayan Rishi exhibited renunciation. But Krishna is the one personality who exhibited all of these opulences in fullness. And this, Prabhupada says, confirms that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So actually, if we were to take home something from this chapter, that it's the title. It's exactly the title. Krishna is the source of all incarnations, and that is mentioned in this verse 1328. Yes, and then the highest expression of the love that Krishna reciprocates with his devotees is during the Ras Leela with the gopis. So Ras Leela is a very misunderstood and misconstrued activity, especially with Indians, and it is often misunderstood to be ordinary sex life. But the Bhagavatam states that it is not so. And then there are various reasons that are given, but essentially it comes in the 10th canto. It comes in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then it's like the Bhagavatam is trying to prepare us through the 9 cantos in order for us to be able to even become qualified to look into the Ras Leela. Otherwise, if we just directly dive into the Ras Leela, it is for sure that we will make some misinterpretation, and which will actually cause a spiritual suicide in a way. So that is like the about the Ras Leela, which is like the highest expression of love that Krishna has with his devotees. And the word Swayam is used in the verse. Ete chamsha kalha pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Okay, which indicates again that Krishna doesn't have any source. And of course, Krishna mentions in many places in the Gita as well, the 7th chapter, Matta parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. Nobody is equal to me. Okay, and then in 10th chapter, Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhuvo. Nobody is equal to or higher than me. Na anyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. And then Aham sarvasya prabhuvo. In the 10th chapter, Krishna is saying, I am the source of all the material and spiritual worlds. And then in the 15th chapter, again, Krishna is saying, Vedaisha sarvair aham eva vedyo. Okay. Yeah, you are reading all the Vedas, dear sir, but what is the ultimate aim? Okay, the ultimate aim that Krishna is saying is Ahameva Vedyo. Vedesha Sarvair Ahameva Vedyo. I am to be known through all the Vedas. And this is like the supremacy of Krishna, the special thing about Krishna. And then in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami writes that Lord Krishna has 64 attributes in full. And he explains that the Vishnu Tattvas, the Vishnu incarnations and other incarnations, they have around 60. Lord Shiva, who is like, he's not Vishnu, he's somewhere between Vishnu Tattva, the category of Vishnu, and the Jivas, the spirit souls like us. So Lord Shiva is midway, and he possesses to a fullest of 54 attributes. and then us, like the jivas, the spirit souls, we can at the max, exhibit 78%, 50 of those qualities. So which are exhibited actually by Brahma. So Brahma is like the most, I don't know, the greatest person in the category of spirit souls like you and me. And then he can exhibit a maximum of 50. So for us spirit souls, that's the limit. Beyond 50, we cannot exhibit. So Krishna actually, as I said, exhibits 64 attributes. So does anyone know what are those 4 special attributes that he exhibits in addition to the 60 that Vishnu exhibits? Yeah, sorry, Megha, this is a lot of information. And yeah, this is a very technical chapter actually. So the 4 special attributes of Krishna that are not there in any other manifestation.
Pastimes.
Pastimes, yes, that is the Leela Madhuri. He is an undulating ocean of astonishing pastimes, out of which the Ras Leela is supremely captivating. And then the second one is Prema Madhuri. He's always surrounded by his devotees who possess, sorry?
Flute, Venu Madhuri.
Venu Madhuri, flute is another one, third one, yeah. And then finally, Rupa Madhuri, his extraordinary beauty, which astonishes everyone. So that these are like the 4 special qualities of Krishna. So yeah, actually, I'm myself feeling very overwhelmed with all this information that I am giving out. So just to recap, so we spoke about the 3 different forms of Vishnu, who are the Purusha avatars. And then we spoke about the Leela avatars, so many of them. And then in text 28, we spoke about Krishna being the source of all the incarnations that were mentioned. And then, yeah, this is where we are. So any questions so far, any points, any inaccuracies in what I said, please go ahead.
I think Megha has a question.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Yeah.
Yeah, so Krishna is the source of all the avatars. But then Krishna is also one of the avatars, like which is I think 12. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something that I was discussing with Karan Prabhu the other day when I told him that. So yes, it seems in a way contradictory, but the way to understand it is that so when Krishna descends, he doesn't disrupt the schedule that is there. So that is why he descends as one of the incarnations of Vishnu. But we see in the very next verse, when after all this has been listed, that Krishna is the source of everything in 1.3.28. Etecham Shakala Pumsa, Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. And actually, Prabhupada writes in the purport that in this particular stanza, Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is distinguished from other incarnations. He is counted amongst the avatars because out of his causeless mercy, the Lord descends from his transcendental abode. Avatara means one who descends. All the incarnation of the Lord, including the Lord himself, descend to the different planets of the material world as also different species of life to fulfill particular missions. Sometimes he himself comes, sometimes his plenary portions, they do it, or sometimes he empowers some person to do it, and so on. So yes, it might seem contradictory in a way, but then that is what the Bhagavatam says. So it's like if you look at these series of verses, okay, the initial verse says that, okay, now we are going to list all the incarnations of Vishnu. And then the incarnation of one of the incarnations of Vishnu is listed as Krishna. And then right after everything is listed, there is a clarification. Hey, if you think that Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu, it is not so. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. That is like what is mentioned after the list. Yeah, you have a follow-up, please.
So in the same chapter, it's mentioned that God is formless. But then Krishna had a form, right? Like the human form.
In the same chapter, God is mentioned as formless.
Yeah, yeah. I think in the same chapter I read when I
Okay.
was reading. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like so God can be realized on multiple levels. It's not that the realization of God is the same always. So is God formless? Yes, God is formless. Does God have a form? Yes, God has a form as well. Okay. It is something like, if I were to give an analogy which I've read and which appeals a lot. So let's say you're on the train station waiting for a train, and then the train is approaching from a very far off distance. Okay. Then the train is approaching and all you see is a light. All you see is a light and you don't see anything else. So that light is actually, it doesn't have a form. It's just light. Okay. It's formless. Now you who haven't seen the train ever in your life might conclude that, okay, I had come here for a train, and then yeah, that's the train I see. Train is just light. Train doesn't have a form. So then, okay, that is your conclusion correct? If I had to ask you, Megha, is your conclusion that the train is light when the train is at a far off distance? Is that correct?
No, probably.
No, it is correct. It is correct, because that's your perception right now. So as per your perception, it is correct, but it is not complete. Why? Because as the train approaches more, you see that, okay, the train is not just light which is spreading everywhere. The train is actually also a localized entity. It has a particular localized, existence, where when you see the shape of the train and things like that. Then your understanding of the train actually develops more. Now, is the train light? Is the train formless? Yes, on one level it is. But does the train have a localized existence? Yes, it does have a localized existence. Okay. And then as the train approaches more, then you see that, okay, there are some people in the train. The train is not just existing on its own. There are some people behind, like in the train, who are driving the train. And now you understand that, yes, that your understanding about the train develops even further. Okay. And this is the train example, of course, but even in realizing God, that is what happens. So yes, on one level we can realize God as a formless entity, and that is what many of the spiritual circles talk about, a formless, a nirakar God. Okay. He doesn't have any form. How can God have form? And the reason they think like that is that's also mentioned in one of the purports by Prabhupada, is because when you talk about form, you think that form is limiting. Like you and I, we all have a form, but our form is going to perish after a few years. Similarly, any form we see around us perishes, right? So when the spiritualists, they think about form, they think that no, if, because in my experience, whatever form I see is perishable, I cannot give God a form. Because if God had to have a form, then that also has to be perishable. But that cannot be the case, because God by definition is not perishable. So then what, right? So then the Vaishnava tradition explains that God has, so what causes limitation, what causes perishing is not form. What is perishable is matter. So God has a form, but that form is spiritual in nature. Okay, so these are like the multiple levels of realization. You can realize God as formless, as some sort of light, and then above that you can realize God as a Paramatma in your heart, as a localized entity. Okay, like one of the Purusha avatars is Kshirodakshai Vishnu. He expands in everyone's heart as like a companion, as and a supervisor, so to say, and also a friend, if we want that to be. And then beyond that, God is also Bhagavan, or the personality, the source of all these other different manifestations. And then in the first, I think it was the second chapter, Sumon Prabhu mentioned a very important verse. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwan iti shabdete. So vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam. So there are these three manifestations of God which are one without a second, advayam. And what are those? Brahmeti. Brahmeti is like the light of the train. Paramatmeti is like the localized shape of that train, which is like the Paramatma in our heart. And Bhagavan iti shabdete. Bhagavan is like the complete understanding. So this is like in already the chapter was very technical, and then I went even more technical. So sorry about that, but I hope that makes sense. So we don't have to think of realization of God as a flat thing. Realization of God is always a hierarchical thing. And then if someone is wondering, I was referring to this, the conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord is appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable. Yeah, this is not even spiritual, Mataji. So the Virat Rupa, actually we'll talk about it. The Virat Rupa that is spoken about, it's actually the form of the Lord, which is imagined as the world itself. So, and then Prabhupada mentions also in the purport that because Lord's form is spiritual, this Virat Rupa form, where the practitioner conceives the world to be the form of the Lord, is actually imaginary. Okay, because sometimes we cannot think of a spiritual form. So that is where the neophyte devotees who cannot think of a spiritual form, for them this Virat Rupa is given to at least focus on the Lord. So yeah. So the Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan that I mentioned, it is actually beyond the world. It is not a part of the world. So in order to go beyond the world, we have to give up this imaginary conception of God as God's form, as being the world itself. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there will be follow-ups on this, but we can discuss one of these Saturdays or something, right? So that is 1.3.28, right? That Krishna is being proclaimed to be the source of all the incarnations. And then verse 29 talks about the Falashruti. Whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearances of the Lord with devotion in the morning and in the evening gets relief from all the miseries of life. So in the Bhagavad Gita, this is actually an important thing in the purport that I had marked. So simply knowing factually the mysterious way of the Lord's incarnation in this material world can liberate one from material bondage. Therefore, the birth and activities of the Lord as manifested by him for the welfare of the people in general are not ordinary. They are mysterious, and only by those who carefully try to go deep into the matter by spiritual devotion is the mystery uncovered. So this is very important. Only those who carefully try to go deep into the matter by spiritual devotion. So something I felt which is important. And now comes the Virat Rupa, okay, with the verse that you mentioned. The conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having a form, but factually the Lord has no material form, right? That word material is very important. So the Lord's form is Satchidananda Vigraha. It is spiritual. So the conception of another thing in the purport, the conception of the Lord known as the Vishwarupa or the Virat Rupa is particularly not mentioned along with the various incarnations of the Lord, because all the incarnations of the Lord mentioned above are transcendental and there is not a tinge of materialism in their bodies. Yeah. And then, wow, it's already 10. So I think I'll try to make it quick from here, because if we go on covering every verse, then yeah. So that is till the text 30, okay. And then from till the text 34, this is what is explained in a nutshell, is that the Virat Rupa is of course imaginary. And then there is a gross material reality, the gross form of the Lord that we see, like, and beyond that, there is a subtle form. So let's say in our case, it's easier to understand in our case as individual souls residing in bodies. We have a gross body, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, which we can feel and touch and things like that, that our senses can perceive. And then beyond that, there is a subtle body. So our subtle body is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So we talk a lot about mind control and things like that. That is a part of our subtle body. But the self is actually even different from these two levels. The self is actually the spirit soul, who is not even subtly material, not even grossly material. So the whole gist of this 30 to 34 is that in order to realize Brahman, in order to realize, at least to go to the spiritual level or to go to the level of Brahman, that formlessness, we have to give up the conceptions of the subtle material body and the gross material body. That is a necessity. Otherwise, we cannot proceed towards the spiritual unless we realize that I'm not the gross body as well as I'm not the subtle body. Yes, and then text 34 purport. Yeah. Okay, I'll skip that for now. Text 35 is interesting. So it talks about a contradiction. Evam janmani karmani ya akartur ajanasya cha. Okay. So the contradiction is the birth and activities of the unborn and the inactive. That is the text 35, which is really interesting because on one hand, you're saying that the Lord is unborn and inactive. On the other hand, you're saying that the learned men describe the births and activities. So how that is? So that is again a contradictory thing that the Lord exhibits. It is also one of his kind of great things. In Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says that the entire world rests in me, but the entire world also doesn't rest in me. In the very next verse, he's saying. And then he's saying to Arjuna, look at my glory. Okay. Look at my glory that I can do contradictory things at the same time, So that is the glory of the Lord, where all contradictions rest in him. So, and our logic cannot make sense of that. How can two contradictory statements be put together and be true at the same time? But that is what Krishna calls his mystic opulence. And that is actually Achintya Bheda Bhed also, right? Bhed and Abhed are two contradictory ideas. So, and how does Bheda and Abheda be true at the same time? That is Achintya, or inconceivable to the ordinary mind, to the material mind. And that is what is Achintya Bheda Bhed, which is like the philosophical system of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And then beyond that, text 35 to 39 describes the Lord and describes how to understand the Lord. Okay, and that is in text 37. Sutta Goswami says, "Santanvato natacharyam ivadnyah." Okay, so the foolish with a poor fund of knowledge cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names, and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculation nor in their words. So, one thing that Krishna makes very clear in the Bhagavad Gita, as well as Queen Kunti also talks about, Nato Natya Dharoyata, Maya Javani Kachanam, Adnyadokshajam Avyayam, Nalakshase Mudadrisha, Nato Natya Dharoyata. You are invisible to the foolish observer. Okay, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. So that is what unless we take up the process of bhakti, unless we take up the process of inquiry, the form of the Lord will not be revealed to us. The Lord won't reveal himself to us. And then that is and then text 39 actually glorifies the questioning. So in the notes that I am referring to, so after hearing that the Lord is understood only by bhakti, so the way to understand the Lord is, as I said, through bhakti. And then when the sages of Naimisharanya lament that they do not have bhakti, to encourage them, Suta Goswami speaks about the 39th verse, which says, only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantees 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. So this is also one thing that resonates with me personally, that the Q&A that happens within Bhakti, there is an encouragement for question and answers. It's not like questions are, suppressed and, doubted. Like your faith is doubted if you have questions. So that is definitely not the case. So Q&A is quite encouraged, and all the Vedic texts actually are Q&As, and Q&As are how we go deeper into spiritual realization, at least get a chance to go deeper into spiritual realizations. And then text 43 is okay. Text 40 to 44 actually talk about the glories of the Bhagavatam. So text 40 glorifies Bhagavatam as the incarnation of Lord Krishna, and that describes the activities of the Supreme Lord, a compilation by Srila Vyasadeva for the ultimate good of all people, and all successful, all blissful, all perfect. It is the cream of all the Vedic scriptures. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amrita drava samyutam. So the Vedic scriptures are like an unlimited ocean of milk, and the essence of milk, which is like butter, is what is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the entire milk expressed in a very palatable way is butter. Similarly, the entire gamut of Vedic literatures expressed in essence and in a very palatable way is Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's how Srimad Bhagavatam is glorified. And then finally in text 43 is where Suta Goswami answers the sixth question that the sages asked. The sixth question is, what is the shelter for religion now that Krishna has passed away? So the verse is, let me check, 43. Krishne sudham upagate dharma jnanadi bhisa kalau nashta drishamesha puranarko dunoditha. This Bhagavad Puran is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So that is where Dharma will reside. Dharma resides after the departure of Krishna back to the spiritual world. So that is the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is non-different from Krishna. It is like the literary incarnation of Krishna. And there is also in the 8th chapter, in Queen Kunti's chapter, there is like we have to take darshan of the Lord from the feet to the face. We, should not directly jump to the face, is what Prabhupada writes in the purport. So similarly, Bhagavatam has to be, so Krishna's face is the 10th canto, which talks about Ras Leela, which is a very high understanding. So in order to get to the 10th canto, we should start with the feet. And the feet of Krishna is the first canto. So we start with the feet and we make our way up, and then we go to the face. That is the actual, that is the recommended sequence of taking darshan as well. So of course, this is not like a ritualistic rule that one has to follow. It can be spontaneous as well, but this is what is mentioned. And then this last verse is also something that I kind of liked, and I wanted to kind of contemplate more about it, but somehow that didn't happen. So the verse is like this: O learned Brahmanas, when Shukadev Goswami recited Bhagavatam there means in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear this very same thing as I learned from him and as I have realized it. So this is very important. Yathaditam yatamatihi. So when at least when I speak a lot of lofty philosophy that I haven't realized, but ideally that should not be the case. I should be speaking something that I have realized, or at least I'm trying my best to realize. So that is something I got from this verse, yathaditam yathamatihi. So very same message. So this is actually the parampara system. This is actually how the knowledge of spirituality is received, through the parampara, through a chain, an unbroken chain of spiritual teachers and students. And that is what I got from this verse. So yeah, when Shukadev Goswami spoke the Bhagavatam to Emperor Parikshit, Suta Goswami, who is speaking to the sages in Naimisharanya, was present, and there he heard it with rapt attention, and then he's giving the same thing to the sages. So the parampara is Vedavyas spoke to Shukadev Goswami, Shukadev Goswami spoke to Suta Goswami, Suta Goswami spoke to the sages at Naimisharanya, that way. So yeah, there were some other points about same message, different realizations and things like that, multi-level scriptures, but I'll not get into that. It's already quite late. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If there is any question, there is a question. So complicated, thanks. Okay. But aren't we supposed to see Krishna in everything, including material things? Yes, we are supposed to see Krishna. So the simple understanding is everything material comes from Krishna, but everything material doesn't take us to Krishna. So yes, when we see something materially wonderful, we should think that this is Krishna's opulence that is coming. And that is exactly what Krishna tells Arjuna in the 10th chapter of the Gita. So the 9th chapter ends by Krishna telling him, Man manabhav madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Think of me always, worship me always, respect me always. And by doing this with love, you will come to me. Now, the very obvious question Arjuna gets is, okay, Krishna, all good, you're telling me to think about you always, worship you always, and things like that. But I'm engaged in the world, right? I am engaged in the world. I have to interact with the world around me. So how do I do that while I am engaged in the world? And that's when Krishna speaks the 10th chapter. So he says, okay, among the trees, I'm like the banyan tree. Among the rivers, I am the Ganges. Okay. So that way Arjuna can think, okay, when he sees the Ganges, he sees that, yes, this is Mother Ganga. She's the best of all rivers. So that will remind him of Krishna. Krishna says, I am the taste of water. So when I drink water, oh yes, this taste of water is Krishna. So yes, we should see Krishna in everything. That is actually a very high level of spiritual realization, where we see Krishna in everything around us. And at the same time, we need to remember that whatever opulence, whatever wonderful things we see around us are not divorced from the glory of Krishna. Because as soon as we start seeing them independent of Krishna, we get entangled. So that is what happens. And that is what has been happening to all of us. Because especially me, when I see something as being there for my own enjoyment, not seeing it in relation to Krishna, that thing will become binding to me. So yeah, very, very pertinent point. Thank you. Vinay Prabhu, you have something?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the class. Like, I know you must have took a lot of efforts to gather.
Oh, Prabhu, frankly speaking, I didn't take effort. I'll be very honest, because yeah, I just referred to Prabhupada's purports. I referred to Bhagavad Subodhini. So, but I couldn't hear many lectures about this topic somehow. But yeah.
Yeah, like all the important principles in Gaudiya Vaishnavism and what we practice, you like you nicely shared. It was like a class of a professor where you need to be attentive to like understand and learn. So thank you so much, Prabhu. So I have a question around Shaktavesh Avatar, as you mentioned. Like Shaktavesh Avatar are like ordinary, I mean, jivas like us, and they are like specially empowered. And then Parshuram, you talked about Parshuram. So like it's just my doubt, like is it okay to compare like Parshuram with Srila Prabhupada in a way? I mean, and calling Srila Prabhupada as a Shaktavesh avatar. And if it's so, like, won't it be like, so for example, in India, there are like many saints where like in their face, they put like picture of Krishna or Rama, or on the body of Ram, they will put the face of that saint, and then they will worship it. If you have seen in like India, they do that, like, because that he was like, the person was kind of empowered or yogi or something, like with Sai Baba or Swami Samartha. People worship them as Vithala or Ram as well. And since they were like empowered in a way and they did some miracles and all. So, I mean, yeah, like, is this comparison, can we do this in public, or like how we need to see this? That's what I want to ask. Like,
Yeah, I mean, so one definitive point about Shaktiavesh Avatar is that the Shaktiavesh Avatar, the Jiva, is empowered to do something that is the mission of the Lord, that aligns with the mission of the Lord. Like in case of Parshuram, since the Kshatriyas were getting adharmic, so the mission of the Lord was to curb that, was to stop that, and that he did by empowering Parshuram. In case of Srila Prabhupada, it was the mission of Lord Chaitanya to take the holy name all around the world. So that he did by empowering Srila Prabhupada. So that is, of course, one thing we have to see, whether the person is doing it for selfish interests, or is there a genuine spiritual intent behind what is happening. That is definitely there. And yeah, as far as, yes, I mean, Shaktiavesh avatar are innumerable in number. Okay, that is what the Bhagavatam says. It's not that there are few and things like that. So Shaktiavesh avatars are innumerable in number. So it's not that a Shaktiavesh avatar just exists in our tradition. Okay, the Shaktiavesh avatar can exist in other traditions, but there have to be checks and balances where we need to really find out what is being said, and whether it's the follower's own imagination, or whether that person is really empowered and he's doing something genuinely in line with the Shastras, in line with bhakti, that way. So that way we can categorize somebody. Now, Srila Prabhupada, if you look at it, like, we are very close to what Srila Prabhupada did. We are reaping the benefits after a very short time of what Srila Prabhupada did. But if you see from a very unbiased perspective, it's a very amazing thing that he did. Like, all scholars and everything in academia, they are blown away by how can one person achieve so much, that too in 11 years at the fag end of his life. And that definitely takes special empowerment, and all the more so because empowerment from the Lord, because it is aligned with the mission of the Lord. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else would like to add. Gaur Kumar Prabhu, other senior devotees, please.
I think you covered everything so nicely, Prabhu. I mean, first of all, the class was it was not an easy class to give, because there's so many concepts, especially for someone who's new, to digest all these concepts are very difficult. Even simple things like what are Purusha Avataras, what are Leela Avataras, and the formless, all these things come in this chapter. So I think you covered it very well, and you answered the questions also very well. It's very impressive. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think Krishnan Prabhu has something to say, and then Parikshit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this was such a wonderful class, and thank you for doing this class. The class felt, of course, I did read, the chapter before, and it feels like it's a nice executive summary of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Pretty much every avatar is covered, and
yes.
while you were going through, we could feel it running in our heads. At least I could feel the whole story running, in my mind. And there was the only, I was really looking forward to you doing verse 33, because that was one of the verses where I read the purport, but you somehow skipped it. So maybe some other day, if you can do maybe a class just on verse 33, Prabhu. That's my request. It'll be a nice thing.
Whenever a person experiences by self-realization that both gross and subtle bodies have nothing to do with the pure self, at that time he sees himself as well as the Lord. Yeah.
Yeah.
I covered it a little bit when I said that we need to go beyond the gross and subtle bodies to realize for self-realization. But yeah, it's a deep verse, Prabhu, as you said. It's a very deep verse. And but yeah, I mean, I just referred to this. I don't know if you all know this book, Bhagavad Subodhini.
Yes.
This is the first and second canto. They have done it for all the cantos. And yeah, personally, I'm not very happy with the class today. But yeah, I'm happy if you all gained anything and if I was able to serve.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Your flow was very, very nice, and you covered the whole thing. You covered the entire, the entire chapter. When I was reading through the entire chapter, I was wondering, how can somebody do all this in an hour? But you didn't skip a single verse. You just went all the way through. So which is very, very amazing. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for doing this.
Parikshit Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Jitendra Prabhu. I was looking for a word. I think it's literally wow for the class. I don't know why you're not happy, but I'm really happy. I joined little late. I'm sorry for that. And Vinay Prabhu was mentioning about preparation, right? I think it's all in the practice. So nothing to be prepared for you.
No.
I would say.
No.
I have one question, Prabhu.
Yes.
I actually missed those shlokas, so I don't know if you covered, but I'll still ask. I was reading this chapter. So my question is on the third incarnation of Narad Muni.
Mm-hmm.
So, Prabhu, we read in Bhagavatam, right, that when Narad Muni explains to Vyasdev about how he was, born as a son of maid servant,
Right.
and he says about like importance of remnants he had, and then basically the story how Narad Muni became Narad Muni. So, and here we see Lord accepts empowered, and he's basically saying that is an empowered incarnation. So, are these two happening in different times, or basically how to understand this? That was something when I was reading, I was thinking about it, and then I thought like I'll ask you.
Yeah, with Narad Muni, I think we can at least make sense of the fact that this might have happened in this thing, as in I think in one of the next chapters, future chapters, where Narad Muni speaks about his previous life, and the fact that he's considered as an empowered incarnation. I guess that can fall into place, right, together. Or I mean, what I mean to say is Narad Muni could have been born as a maidservant son and then perfected his spiritual life, and then finally in his perfection he might have been empowered by the Lord, right? It is quite possible, empowered by the Lord to do extraordinary things that way. So there is the contradiction comes, like one of the things that I was thinking of is sometimes this Parshuram, he is mentioned as Shaktiavesh avatar, but in the Dashavtar Stotra, he's told he's Keshavadrita Bhrigupati Rupa, right? Like the 10 incarnation Dashavatar of Krishna, Dashavtar Stotra. So he's known as an incarnation of Krishna. So how do we understand? So then I searched Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's website, and then I found an answer. So he writes that these pastimes happen in different kalpas. The same pastimes happen in different kalpas. So sometimes when a particular function is to be executed and there is no one to do it, Lord Vishnu himself actually does that. For instance, if there is no one qualified in the universe to become Brahma, then the Lord himself becomes Brahma. So he does the job of Brahma. And even in, I mentioned Chakshusha Manu, the Manu previous to the current Manu. During the rule of Chakshusha Manu, there was no one qualified to be Indra. So actually Lord Vishnu became Indra that time. So yes, so that's why we might find these contradictory things sometimes, that something happens similar, like similar things happen in different kalpas, but sometimes the Lord himself does it, and sometimes he empowers somebody to do it. That is in case of the like Brigupati, Parshuram and things. But Narad Muni is is that your question? I don't know if I misunderstood the question.
No, yeah. I think you covered it well. That the point you mentioned, like in previous birth, he became like he basically, you know, I don't know the right word, but he became Narad Muni, and then he was empowered to.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I mean the category is of the jivas in Shaktyavesh avatar. It's the jivas who are empowered. So the jiva could have been a Baddha jiva before, but then by spiritual practice he perfected it and then empowered to do great things. So definitely, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Jitendra Prabhu. That was an amazing class. And thank you all so much. I think many of you read this chapter and came prepared for this class, and that really helped. And so we'll continue to do the same. So next week, it's going to be chapter 4, the appearance of Narad Muni, and it'll be covered by Lekha Mataji. So we're really looking forward to that class also. And after that, it will be Karan Prabhu, who will be covering the chapter after that. So thank you all so much. I'll also post the link for chapter 4. So thank you again, Jitendra Prabhu. So Vancha Kalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Grace Jitendra Prabhu ki jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna.